Have you ever landed in Iceland, maybe at Keflavik, and just noticed something striking about the people? Maybe it's those really intense blue eyes you see everywhere, or how tall many Icelanders are, or perhaps you catch a surprising flash of red hair.
Yeah, it's visually quite distinct, isn't it?
It really is. There's this common picture we often have, of what an Icelander should look like.
Yeah.
Usually very Nordic, right? Fair hair, fair skin.
That quintessential image, yeah. Almost uniform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you actually look closer, you start seeing this incredible tapestry of traits. It tells a much, much richer story, a really complex genetic story, actually.
That's right. It goes way beyond the stereotype.
So, okay, let's unpack this today. Our mission really is to take a deep dive into what makes Iceland's population so genetically fascinating. We're going to explore this unique blend of, well, ancient history, a pretty challenging environment, let's be honest, and centuries of this subtle genetic mixing that's shaped how they look.
We're going beyond those first impressions. Yeah, moving past the stereotypes to uncover the surprising facts behind why Icelanders often look, well, uniquely different.
It's a great topic.
And we've been digging into some really compelling research for you. We've got genetic surveys from 2015, 2017, 2018.
Some really solid studies there.
Yeah, and European health data from 2019, plus amazing insights from historians and scientists looking at ancestry and adaptation.
It brings together genetics, history, environment.
Absolutely. And I think as we unpack this, you'll have some real aha moments, because what we're finding really challenges those common assumptions. It shows how the small island nation became like a genetic marvel.
We really did.
You'll get not just what they look like, but how this unique story came about and maybe why it matters for understanding populations more broadly.
Definitely.
Okay, so where should we start? The eyes seem like a good place. They often make that first impression.
Good starting point.
We hear that more than 80% of Icelanders have blue or gray eyes. That's one of the highest rates anywhere in the world, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Hugely high. If you compare it to, say, Germany, it's around 40%. In the U.S., maybe 27%.
Wow. So that overwhelming dominance of light eyes, it really seems to point directly back to those early Norse settlers from Norway, right? That strong Viking legacy.
It absolutely does. On the surface,
Yeah.
that intense blue, it's very much a genetic signature of their Norse heritage. But, and here's what gets really interesting.
Okay.
A 2015 genetic survey threw a bit of a curveball. It found that a significant chunk, about 10 to 15% of Icelanders, actually have green eyes.
Green. That much.
Yeah, and that's a higher percentage than you'd typically find in most of mainland Scandinavia.
Huh. So it's not just blue.
Exactly, and it's not just some, random quirk. It's a visible sign, a genetic echo of something else. It directly challenges that idea of a purely Nordic population.
So what's the something else? Where do the green eyes come from?
That variation points strongly towards the Celtic influence. Remember, during the Viking Age settlement around the 9th century, it wasn't just Norsemen arriving.
Right, they brought women.
Exactly. They brought women over, often from Ireland and Scotland, Celtic women. And that genetic contribution, well, it still shines through today, quite literally, in their eyes.
That's fascinating. A constant reminder of that blending. So, despite this Celtic hint in the eyes, the general image is still very pale skin, that northern glow. How does that actually play out? Does the Celtic side show up in skin tone too?
You're right, the paleness is dominant. Around 95% of Icelanders have pale to very fair skin. And that's not just chance.
It's an adaptation.
Precisely. A brilliant evolutionary adaptation to those high northern latitudes. You have scarce sunlight for large parts of the year.
Long, dark winters.
Exactly. So, paler skin is much better at absorbing the available UV light to produce vitamin D. That was absolutely vital for survival for centuries.
Makes total sense.
But even within that widespread paleness, those 2017 genetic studies found subtle variations, differences that align with that Celtic ancestry.
Like what kind of variations?
You might see slightly warmer undertones in the skin in some families. So imagine walking around Reykjavik, you could see someone with that classic, almost porcelain white skin and icy blonde hair.
The stereotypical look.
Right. And standing right next to them, someone with maybe a softer, slightly rosier complexion, perhaps freckles too. It might remind you more of Ireland than Norway,
Wow. It's like seeing history written on their faces.
It is. It's a beautiful visual spectrum reflecting both ancestral lines.
Incredible. Okay, and then there's height. Icelanders are consistently ranked among the tallest people globally.
They really are noticeably tall, yeah.
That 2019 European Health Survey put Icelandic men at an average of 181 centimeters, that's about 5'11", and women at 167 centimeters, 5'6". That puts them easily in the top 10 tallest nations.
Right up there with the Dutch and others.
So why? How did this relatively small island population get so tall?
Well, it's a really compelling mix of genetics and, crucially, diet over a long time. Their Viking ancestry certainly played a part. Those Norse populations carry genes that predispose them towards being tall. That's one piece.
But not the whole story.
Not at all. Equally crucial, maybe even more so, was Iceland's heavy reliance on very protein-rich foods for centuries. Think about their environment. Not much agriculture possible initially.
Right, lots of fishing, sheep.
Exactly. Fish, lamb, dairy, these were absolute staples. Not just, cultural preferences, they were survival foods. And don't forget things like cod liver oil.
Ah, yes, the famous cod liver oil.
And skyr, that thick, amazing Icelandic yogurt. Super high in protein. These foods were packed with growth-boosting nutrients.
So it wasn't just genetics, it was the fuel they had.
Absolutely. It fueled that stature across generations. It quite literally helped build taller people over time. It's a powerful case for how important sustenance is in shaping populations.
It really is. Okay, so we've got eyes, skin, height.
Sure.
What about hair? The stereotype is just blonde, 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 right?
That's the cliche, yeah. Wall-to-wall blondes. But the reality, much more nuanced.
How nuanced?
Well, data shows that while about 50% are naturally blonde.
Okay, so half. Still a lot.
Still a lot, yes. But a very significant 40% have light to medium brown hair. And then another 10% or so have darker shades, even black hair sometimes.
So it's really only half blonde. That's quite different from the image.
It is. It's a much broader palette than many people assume.
And you mentioned the Celtic link for green eyes. Does that show up in hair color too? Does it explain some of the non-blonde hair?
Oh, absolutely. Those Celtic genes are definitely visible in hair color. Most strikingly, actually, with red hair.
Red hair, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, red hair pops up in about 2 to 4% of the Icelandic population. Now, that might not sound like a huge number.
To compare it to...
Compared to mainland Scandinavia, it's actually slightly higher. Another little genetic flag from Ireland and Scotland.
Fascinating. What about texture? Mostly straight.
Mostly, yes. Around 75% have straight or wavy hair, which again fits that dominant Norse heritage. But you do see curly hair making appearances sometimes.
And that's the Celtic link again?
Usually, yes. When you see those tighter curls, it's often traceable back to that Celtic ancestry. Yeah. So, picture that Reykjavik cafe again.
Right.
You might have that teenager with the super straight flaxen hair and icy blue eyes.
Right.
Sitting next to a friend with fiery red hair, maybe some curls, a sprinkle of freckles.
Both completely Icelandic.
Exactly. Both unmistakably Icelandic, but visually so distinct. It's like a living illustration of their genetic journey, constantly challenging those simple stereotypes.
It really brings the statistics to life. And I guess this blending extends to their facial structure, too. I read somewhere that anthropologists used to debate this. Like, are they pure Norse or a mixed group?
Yeah, that was a real debate historically. But the evidence eventually landed very firmly on the side of a mixed heritage. A unique one, but definitely mixed.
So how does that show up in faces?
You see both influences clearly. Many Icelanders have those features we think of as classic Nordic high cheekbones, maybe a longer face shape, straight noses. But then you also consistently see traits that hint strongly at the Celtic side, maybe slightly softer jawlines, faces that are a bit wider, and again, those freckles often associated with Celtic populations.
So a real blend.
A real blend. And what's really fascinating is something highlighted in a 2018 study. It noted that Icelanders tend to have a higher frequency of quite angular facial features compared to most other Northern Europeans.
More angular? Why would that be?
It's likely due to something called genetic bottlenecks. Think about it. You start with a relatively small founding population, maybe 20,000 to 30,000 people back in the 10th century.
Okay.
And then, crucially, very little new immigration came in for centuries afterwards. They were very isolated.
Right. An island nation.
Exactly. So that initial gene pool got concentrated. Certain traits, maybe features that were already present, just got amplified over generations because there wasn't much new genetic input to dilute them.
So the isolation sort of sharpened those features.
That's a good way to put it. It potentially explains why some Icelanders can almost look more Scandinavian than Scandinavians. Their isolation distilled and perhaps intensified certain Nordic features that were present in the founders.
Wow. Like a genetic time capsule that also acted as a magnifying glass? That leads us perfectly into their overall genetic blueprint. Modern DNA tech gives us hard numbers now, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Forget the guesswork of old anthropology. Modern genetic analysis paints a very clear picture.
What does it show?
Consistently, across multiple large studies, Icelanders trace about 60 to 65% of their ancestry back to Norse roots, primarily Norway.
Okay, so the majority is Norse.
The majority, yes. But a very substantial minority, 35 to 40%, traces back to Celtic origins, mostly Ireland and Scotland.
So roughly a 60-40 or 65-35 split.
Exactly. And that ratio holds up remarkably well in different studies. It's a direct scientific confirmation of that historical narrative. Viking age mixing of Norse men with Celtic women, the genes tell the same story as the history books.
That ancestry mix alone is compelling. But you keep mentioning isolation. How did that factor, combined with the small number of founders, create something truly unique in their genome? Not just their looks, but their underlying genetics.
This is where Iceland becomes almost a natural laboratory for genetics. It's quite unique.
How so?
Because of that small founding population, the bottleneck effect we talked about, and then centuries of very limited immigration, Iceland experienced a really strong genetic drift. Meaning random fluctuations in gene frequencies became much more pronounced than they would in a large, constantly mixing population. Certain genetic variants, some rare elsewhere, might have become more common just by chance, or because they were linked to traits favored by the environment or founder effect.
I see.
A 2017 study specifically noted this. It led to a unique clustering of genetic variants. Think of it like a specific genetic recipe or signature for Icelanders that you just don't find in the same combination anywhere else in Europe.
So their overall genetic makeup is distinct.
Very distinct. So much so, in fact, that international biotech companies and researchers actively study the Icelandic population. Their relatively homogeneous yet uniquely structured genome is incredibly valuable for finding genes linked to rare diseases or understanding how certain common diseases manifest.
That's incredible. They're isolated, yet they're providing global insights because of that isolation.
It's a perfect paradox, isn't it? A unique genetic heritage shaped by isolation, now contributing to global medical knowledge.
Truly amazing. So this brings us to identity. With this complex blend of ancestry and this unique genetic story shaped by isolation, what does it mean to be an Icelander today? How does this physical diversity, this genetic uniqueness, play into their sense of self? I imagine the idea of what an Icelander should look like isn't simple.
No, it's definitely not simple. There's a fascinating tension there, historically and even sometimes today.
What way?
Well, historically, you had some nationalist narratives that really tried to promote that image of the tall, blonde, blue-eyed Icelander as the real or ideal look, an attempt to align purely with a perceived Nordic heritage.
Ignoring the other part of the story.
Exactly. Ignoring or downplaying that substantial Celtic contribution, which, as the genetics clearly show, shaped nearly half the gene pool. So researchers, armed with this DNA evidence, consistently push back against that overly simplistic, pure Nordic idea. It's just not historically accurate.
So the science shows the diversity is the authentic history.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But, cultural ideas can be sticky. You still sometimes see debates flare up, maybe online or in discussions
About
identity and appearance. If photos of darker-haired or red-haired Icelanders get shared, sometimes you'll see comments questioning it, like, are they really Icelandic or are they less Icelandic?
Wow, really? Even now?
It happens. It highlights the deeper question we all grapple with sometimes. Should national identity be defined primarily by how someone looks or by shared culture, language, history, values?
That's a fundamental question.
And the counterargument, which resonates very strongly with many Icelanders today, is that their visual diversity is the proof of their authentic, complex, and frankly, more interesting history. It's something to be embraced, not explained away.
That makes sense. And for Icelanders, their physical traits seem deeply tied not just to identity, but to this narrative of survival and pride, don't they?
Absolutely. Think about those traits we discussed. Pale skin for light absorption, maybe taller frames for better energy conservation in the cold, those hardy facial features standing up to the wind. These weren't just random.
They were adaptations.
Critical adaptations that helped them endure in a really challenging land, a place where nature is powerful and unforgiving. Over centuries, these physical traits became embedded in their identity as symbols of resilience, of toughness.
Strength found in adapting to harsh conditions.
Yes. But the pride today isn't just about being tough Vikings. It's also deeply rooted in understanding and embracing that dual heritage. recognizing that their uniqueness comes not from being pure anything, but from this specific fascinating blend of Norse and Celt, shaped further by the island's profound isolation.
So the complexity is the identity.
In many ways, yes. That whole journey from settlers facing a harsh land through centuries of isolation to becoming this scientifically fascinating genetic population, it adds incredible depth to how they see themselves. Identity is so much more than just appearance.
It really is. Let's try and paint a final picture for our listeners. Imagine you actually land at Keflavik Airport. You're watching the crowds. You might see that tall man, ash blonde hair, sky blue eyes, pulling his suitcase, and right next to him, a young woman with vibrant auburn curls, maybe a dusting of freckles across her nose.
Different looks, same passport.
Exactly. Or maybe you see a group of teenagers laughing together near the gate. One could be pale as snow, another might have a slightly warmer, maybe rosier hue, perhaps one even has strikingly dark hair. But they're all chatting away in Icelandic. Each face holds a different piece of that history.
It's right there to see.
Or picture shifting away from the city, maybe to a small fishing village on the coast. You see older fishermen, their faces weathered by the Atlantic wind, maybe those sharp Nordic cheekbones telling tales of generations.
Faces that have seen some winters.
Definitely. And then nearby, maybe a small child with bright red hair playing by the shore, carrying a genetic story that literally began centuries ago in Ireland or Scotland. These aren't abstract statistics. They're living, breathing illustrations of Iceland's unique genetic makeup playing out every single day.
And this deep dive, it isn't just about Iceland, is it? It's a microcosm.
How do you mean?
It helps us understand those powerful universal forces like migration. What happens when populations become isolated for long periods, how environments relentlessly shape us. These forces act on human populations everywhere.
So Iceland's story holds broader lessons.
Definitely. It challenges us all to look beyond those easy, simplistic ideas about identity and appearance, to appreciate the incredible, intricate complexity that truly defines human groups all over the world. Every population has a story written in its genes.
So wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway? Why do Icelanders look the way they do, often so different?
Well, it boils down to Iceland being this incredible intersection of ancient history and unique circumstances. You have that foundational collision of Norse and Celtic ancestry.
The 60-40 split, roughly.
Right. Then you layer on top the effect of a small founding population, that genetic bottleneck, which amplified certain traits. And finally, the shaping power of a harsh environment rewarding specific adaptations over centuries of isolation.
All those factors together.
Altogether, the result is this nation with really striking appearances. Yes, blonde hair and blue eyes are very common. They dominate visually in some ways. But the red hair, the freckles, the brown hair, the subtle differences in features are constant, visible reminders of history's complex fingerprints.
It's that paradox you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Scientists often point to it. Icelanders are isolated enough to have preserved unique genetics, creating that distinct recipe. Yet they were mixed enough right at the start to reflect two very different European ancestries.
So the first glance might be Scandinavian.
Right, you might think typical Scandinavian initially. Yeah. But if you look closer, if you understand the story behind the faces, you realize you're seeing something truly distinct. A unique human mosaic, really.
So a final thought for everyone listening. Next time you see an Icelander, maybe you're lucky enough to be in Reykjavik, or maybe you just encounter someone out in the world, in London, New York, wherever. Take a moment.
Look beyond the surface.
Yeah. Notice the details. The pale skin, perhaps. The tall stature. Maybe that surprising flash of red hair among the blondes. Remember that each face tells this incredible story, a story of Vikings, of Celts, and of the unique, powerful island that shaped them over 1,000 years.
And maybe that's the real lesson. Icelanders don't look the way they do in spite of their history.
They'll look that way because of it.
Precisely. And that story, written in their genes and on their faces, is a pretty extraordinary testament to the journey of human adaptation and identity.